Hello, I'm Alma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of this pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. On tonight's headlines. Wildfires in California have torched a record more than 2 million acres as smoke hampers efforts to airlift dozens of people trapped by an uncontrolled blaze. President Duterte said he's not favoring convicted U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton by giving him an absolute pardon. Belarus says a leading opposition figure, Maria Kolesnikova, has been detained at the Ukrainian border while trying to cross, but Kiev says she is being held after resisting a forced deportation. Two Australian journalists were rushed out of China overnight after Chinese police sought to question them, according to their employers. California today is home to a record-shattering heat wave at about 24 wildfires burning across the state. Nearly 15,000 firefighters are battling steep terrain and tinder dry conditions as they fight to control the raging inferno. Take a look.
Started and it was pushing to the east and then to the north and then big westerly wind shift, and then today was moved to the south out of a north wind, so the wind's been pretty dramatically inconsistent.
Fire department said wildfires in California have torched a record more than 2 million acres. And the record was hit as the wildfire season still has roughly 2 months to go in the most populous U.S. state. At least 7 people have died as a result of this year's fires. Some 3,800 structures have been damaged or destroyed, according to CAL FIRE figures. The last time the number of acres burned got close to 2 million was in 2018, the same year as the devastating Camp Fire, when a little more than 1.9 million acres went up in flames. More than 14,100 firefighters were battling 24 different wildfires as of Monday afternoon, U.S. time, according to the fire department in a tweet. Among those blazes was the Creek Fire, which started on Friday in steep and rugged terrain, has so far spread to 78,790 acres, and is 0% contained, according to CAL FIRE. Another rapidly growing fire, the Oak Fire, began on Sunday in Mendocino County and has already grown to 1,000 acres. CAL FIRE said that 83 personnel were on hand to battle the blaze, which was 0% contained. Evacuation orders were in effect throughout Southern California on Monday afternoon. In Northern California, more than 200 people were airlifted to safety over the weekend after a fast-moving wildfire trapped them near the Mammoth Pool Reservoir northeast of Fresno. Record temperatures over the 3-day Labor Day weekend have aggravated already dangerous fire conditions and further stressed exhausted California firefighters. The National Weather Service said California has been baking under scorching conditions, with temperatures reaching a record 121 degrees Fahrenheit or 49 degrees Celsius on Sunday in Woodland Hills, an all-time high for Los Angeles County. Meanwhile, in Geneva, the World Health Organization warned against governments politicizing the virus. The World Health Organization replied in general terms after being asked about conflicting messages sent by the Brazilian government over its COVID-19 response. Now, the WHO said governments that provide politically motivated information could face a political backlash.
That sometimes messages are sent to communities that may have political overtones, but building trust, I remember a communications expert once saying to me, it takes years to build trust and seconds to lose it. And I think that's the issue. Good governments build trust with communities by only providing them with verified, evidence-based information. Because if things go wrong, communities will understand. But if communities perceive that they're getting information that is being politically manipulated or that is being managed in a way that is distorting evidence, then unfortunately that comes back to roost. That comes back at a government politically at a later stage. I think that has been the case around the world and for many different disasters over time. Transparency, honesty, admitting error, admitting uncertainty, in fact, highlighting uncertainties and then highlighting where certainties do exist. People can take it. People can absorb that. People are smart and people are realistic. And people aren't looking for magical answers. And they're not looking for unicorns. They understand. We all live in the real world. And in trying to present oversimplified, simplistic solutions for people is not a long-term strategy that wins with populations. So we would call for transparency, consistency, honesty, and admission of uncertainty, admission of error, and I believe that builds trust with communities. And it doesn't matter whether you're a local official, a state official, a national official, or a global official.
Meanwhile, U.S. President Donald Trump on Monday again hinted a coronavirus vaccine will be available before November's election as he accused his Democratic rivals for the White House of undermining public confidence in the immunization. His comments came days after Vice Presidential nominee Kamala Harris said she would not take President Trump's word on the safety and efficacy of an antivirus vaccine if one were ready before the U.S. presidential vote. Take a look.
Biden and his very liberal running mate, the most liberal person in Congress, by the way, is not a competent person, in my opinion, would destroy this country and would destroy this economy. Should immediately apologize for the reckless anti-vaccine rhetoric that they are talking right now. Biden wants to surrender our country to the virus. He wants to surrender our families to the violent left-wing mob, and he wants to surrender our jobs to China.
Meanwhile, Biden also weighed in on Monday, saying he wanted transparency and scientific facts on any future vaccine. A shot to protect against the virus that has killed more than 189,000 in the U.S. and hobbled the world's largest economy has become another flashpoint ahead of polling day. News broke last week that the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention asked states to sweep away red tape that could prevent a network of vaccine distribution centers being fully operational by November 1, 2020. Meanwhile, Democratic presidential nominee Joe Biden visited supporters in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, and here's what he had to say.
One of the problems is the way he's playing with politics. He said so many things that aren't true. I'm worried if we do have a really good vaccine, people are going to be reluctant to take it. And so he's undermining public confidence. But pray God we have it. If I could get a vaccine tomorrow, I'd do it. If it cost me the election, I'd do it. We need a vaccine. We need it now. As quick as we can get it. We have to listen to the scientists. Okay, thank you.
To Saudi Arabia now, 8 people were sentenced to prison for their roles in the murder of journalist Jamal Khashoggi. The official Saudi press agency reported that 5 convicts were sentenced to 20 years in prison. 1 person was sentenced to 10 years and 2 others to 7 years after Khashoggi's family agreed to spare them from execution. Khashoggi, a royal family insider turned critic, was killed and dismembered at the kingdom's consulate in Istanbul in October 2018 in a case that tarnished the reputation of the de facto Saudi ruler, Prince Mohammed. Agnes Calamar, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial summary or arbitrary executions, slammed the ruling as one more act today in this parody of justice. 2 Australian journalists were rushed out of China overnight after Chinese police sought to question them, according to their employers. The withdrawal of Australian Broadcasting Corporation's Bill Birtles and Australian Financial Review correspondent Michael Smith came shortly after China detained a high-profile Australian journalist working for its state-run CGTN TV network. Take a look.
Is it a relief to be back in Australia?
I'll just say it's very disappointing to have to leave under those circumstances, and it's a relief to be back in a country with genuine rule of law, but yeah, this was a whirlwind, and it's not a particularly good experience.
It's a safe presumption that I think all foreign journalists operating in China right now are at some risk, as we've seen with the detention of Ms. Cheng from China's own broadcasting network, been based on some general presumption. It would have been based on a fairly sharp understanding about the risk to those two.
Now, the ABC said Bertels, who was based in Beijing, and Smith, who worked from Shanghai, had sheltered in Australian diplomatic offices for several days before being allowed to leave the country. The pair flew out of Shanghai, accompanied by Australian diplomats, on Monday and arrived in Sydney early Tuesday. The incident comes amid worsening diplomatic relations between the two governments and followed the detention last month of Cheng Lai, an Australian working as a business news anchor for CGTN. Chinese authorities have given no reason for Chen's detention. The ABC said Australia's foreign ministry warned Bertels last week that he should leave China, but on the day before his scheduled departure Thursday, 7 police officers visited his home at midnight and then said he was banned from leaving. The police said they wanted to question Bertels over a national security case, prompting him to take refuge at the embassy. Bertels was questioned by Chinese police later in the week in the presence of Australian diplomats, and the travel ban was lifted, according to ABC.
Facilitating that in the right way.
China said foreign media must follow national laws, as it confirmed that the 2 Australian journalists who fled the country fearing arrest had been investigated. It also said that Cheng Lai, an Australian journalist working for state media CGTN, was detained on national security grounds. Let's listen in.
You have a lot.
中方有关部门在办理一起案件的过程中，依法对比尔和史密斯展开调查询问工作，此举属于正常执法行为。在对比尔和史密斯执法过程中，中方有关部门严格依法办事，中方依法保护新闻采编人员的合法权利，但新闻工作者也有义务遵守中国的法律法规。外国记者只要遵守法律，依法依规进行报道，就没有必要有任何担心。澳大利亚籍人员程磊因涉嫌从事危害中国国家安全的犯罪活动，近期被有关部门依法采取强制措施，并进行审查。目前，此案正在依法侦办过程中，他的各项权利、合法权益均得到合法的保障。
I'm a TV anchor based in Beijing, China, and this is my story. You have a lot of contrasts. The anchor for the global business show on CGTN.
His detention was a new blow to deteriorating relations between the two countries that have seen China warn its citizens of traveling to Australia and vice versa. In the first comments on CGTN anchor Cheng Lai, held since August 14, Foreign Ministry spokesman Zhao Lijian said authorities took compulsory measures against her on suspicion of criminal activity endangering China's national security. Cheng, who conducted interviews with international CEOs for CGTN's Global Business and BizTalk shows, has not been seen in public since being held, although Australian diplomats in Beijing were able to speak to her on August 27. 2 other Australian reporters, Bill Bertels and Michael Smith, fled China overnight, saying they also feared arrest. Now, Cheng is the second high-profile Australian citizen to be detained in Beijing after writer Yang Yangjun was arrested in January 2019 on suspicion of espionage. Earlier this year, Australia warned its citizens they face the risk of arbitrary detention if they travel to China. Belarus said that a leading opposition figure, Maria Kolesnikova, had been detained at the Ukrainian border while trying to cross, but Kiev said she was being held after resisting a forced deportation. Take a look. Now, this is Miss Kolesnikova, and she played a major role in the campaign of opposition candidate Svetlana Tikhanovskaya, who claimed victory over President Alexander Lukashenko in a disputed election last month, and has since spoken at huge protest against his rule. Tikhanovskaya on Tuesday called for Kolesnikova to be freed immediately, along with other detained activists. Belarusian border guards said Kolesnikova had attempted to flee across the border at around 4 a.m. on Tuesday, along with two other members of the Opposition's Coordination Council, according to Press Secretary Anton Rodnikov and Executive Secretary Ivan Kravtsov. Belarus said the BMW car they were traveling in speeded up at the border, and Kolesnikova was practically pushed out of the vehicle. But footage broadcast on state television did not show this. Germany and Britain had demanded answers after Kolesnikova went missing. Police in Belarus have been intensifying efforts to crack down on the opposition, with more than 600 people arrested last Sunday during the latest in a series of huge weekend protests against strongman Lukashenko. Doctors in Germany said Russian opposition activist Alexei Navalny has been taken out of an induced coma and is now responsive. The 44-year-old anti-corruption campaigner and one of President Vladimir Putin's fiercest critics fell ill on a domestic flight last month and was treated in a Siberian hospital before being evacuated to Berlin. Germany said last week that toxicology tests conducted by its armed forces found unequivocal evidence that Navalny had been poisoned with Novichok, the substance used in the 2018 attack on a former Russian double agent and his daughter in the English city of Salisbury. Russian officials have accused Germany of being slow to share the findings of its investigation, despite a request from prosecutors. Now, the United Kingdom is urging more realism from the EU ahead of post-Brexit trade talks. Joining us live from the United Kingdom is Aribel Celestino. Hello, Aribel.
Hello, Alma, and thank you so much. And yes, here's our update. Britain demanded more realism from the European Union ahead of a crucial post-Brexit trade talks on Tuesday. But the mood was soured by reports that London was looking to rewrite an agreement to the two sides that had already been signed. Prime Minister Boris Johnson, Chief Negotiator David Frost said, "We must make progress this week if an agreement is to be reached by the end of a post-Brexit transition period in December. And Alma, for that, we need to see more realism from the EU about our status as an independent country," he said ahead of Tuesday's talk with the EU's Michel Barnier in London. Talks have been deadlocked for months over issues such as the extent of EU access to the UK fishing waters, state aid, and fair competition rules. Both sides say a deal must be agreed by a mid-October EU summit. But there was a concern in Brussels after the Financial Times reported Johnson planned to legislate to override parts of the withdrawal agreement struck before Britain left the EU in January. As you know, Alma, the FT said legislation to be put before the UK Parliament this week would undermine agreements relating to Northern Ireland customs and state aid. Under the protocol, Northern Ireland, which will have Britain's only land border with the EU, will follow some of the bloc's rules to ensure the frontier remains open. Also, Johnson agreed to the withdrawal agreement last year, but he now believes there is an unforeseen risk that it will leave Northern Ireland isolated from the rest of the United Kingdom, the Daily Telegraph reported. Eliminating border checks with the Republic of Ireland was a key part of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement, which ended 30 years of violence over British rule in province. Johnson's spokesman said the UK government was fully committed to implementing the withdrawal agreement and the Northern Ireland Protocol, and we have already taken many practical steps to do. but he said it was taking limited and reasonable steps to clarify specific elements of the protocol in UK law to remove any ambiguity. The report provoked an angry backlash in Dublin and Belfast, where the prospect of a potential hard border is a reminder of decades of unrest. Mary Lou MacDonald, the president of Republican Party Sinn Féin, said the UK would show total disregard for the lives and concern of the people of Ireland if it backtracked on the Brexit deal. That's for me, Alma. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Aribel, for your updates there in the United Kingdom. Stay safe.
Alma, reporting from the United Kingdom, I am Aribel Celestino, and we live in interesting times.
China and India accused each other of firing shots first across a flashpoint Himalayan border, intensifying a months-long standoff between the nuclear-armed neighbors that has already claimed at least 20 lives. China said on Tuesday its soldiers took countermeasures after Indian soldiers opened fire in a contested mountainous region in Ladakh. New Delhi was swift to give its own account, accusing Chinese border forces of blatantly violating agreements and firing a few rounds in the air to intimidate their Indian rivals. It is the first confirmed shooting across the contested frontier for decades, where skittish border forces, by convention, do not use guns to avoid escalations of violence in the remote terrain. The relationship between the neighbors has plunged following a June clash in the contested region in which 20 Indian troops were killed. The countries fought a brief border war in 1962, but officially no shots have been fired in the area since 1975, when 4 Indian troops were killed in an ambush. Because the frontier has never been properly demarcated and the high-altitude terrain is often disorientating, the practice for decades was for neither side to use weapons. Detailed protocols set out procedures for peaceful disengagement if patrols strayed into areas that the other side believed were their territory. Japan's ruling party kicked off the race to pick Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's successor, with his powerful right-hand man, Yoshihide Suga, commanding an all-but insurmountable lead. Chief Cabinet Secretary Suga, the 71-year-old son of a strawberry farmer, has already secured the support of major factions in the Liberal Democratic Party ahead of its leadership vote on September 14. But he isn't running unchallenged, with a popular former defense minister and the party's policy chief standing against him. Take a look.
まず今は大事なのはコロナの中で雇用をまず確保すること、そして事業を推進をすること。
アベノミクスの成長の果実をどう分配するのか、コロナによってより深刻した格差にどう向き合うのか、新しい資本主義というものをどのようにリードしていくのか、このあたりをしっかりと訴えていきたいと思います。
この一極集中、これ以上続けると、東京の抱える負荷が大きすぎる。政治、経済、金融、文化、情報、その中心である東京の負荷をこれ以上増やしてはならない。道路が良くなり、鉄道が良くなり、情報が発達し、そういう中にあって東京一極集中が進む。それは東京の在り方の問題で、国の在り方の問題である。グレートリセットというのはそういうことであって、今までのような考え方を改めていかないと国土の維持はできない。
Thanks to the LDP's solid legislative majority, the race's winner is certain to win a parliamentary vote on September 16 and be named the country's next prime minister. The LDP race began after Abe, Japan's longest-serving premier, abruptly announced late August that he would resign for health reasons. Whoever takes the top office will face a raft of challenges, from the pandemic and a tanking economy to ensuring the postponed Tokyo Olympic Games can go ahead. None of the 3 candidates is seen as offering a policy platform that would differ significantly from Prime Minister Abe's. Former banker Ishiba, 63, is popular with the electorate and consistently topped polls before Abe's resignation. Kishida, also 63, was long viewed as Abe's heir apparent and considered the prime minister's favored successor. But he appeared to fall from grace more recently, with his proposal for a targeted stimulus being cast aside in favor of money for all residents, and Abe has declined to publicly support any one candidate. Suga, who until recently denied any ambition for the top job, said he decided to run to continue Abe's program, especially his economic measures. He has served as Abe's closest advisor and a powerful enforcer of government policy, considered able to bend Japan's vast bureaucracy to the government's will. But while Abe rose to power by touting conservative policies, including amending the constitution, little is known of Suga's ideology. President Duterte on Monday night said he's not favoring convicted U.S. Marine Lance Corporal Joseph Scott Pemberton by giving him an absolute pardon. The president made this remark just hours before Malacanang confirmed that Pemberton, who was convicted for the death of Filipino transgender woman Jennifer Laude, was granted an absolute pardon. President Duterte explained his decision, saying the country did not treat Pemberton fairly when one considers the questions prevailing over his actual prison time. Let's listen in.
Ito bang hindi malaman ngayon ng gobyerno anong klaseng computation gawin, anong factors to contribute to the equation that would arrive at the reasonable conclusion that these things happen and should be there included sa pag-compute. Alam mo, I am not favoring anybody, neither Pemberton nor the family. Pero alam mo, itong gobyerno may konting dapa. Kasi sa good behavior, kailan i-compute mo sa lahat, detain siya for the crime, facing trial, and prison siya for the crime. Iba yung detenado ka habang yung kaso pinapanggan ng korte, trial. Iba naman yung detenado ka na, sentensyado ka na after trial. Siya kasi, well, being tried, detained na siya. Tapos, nung na-convicted siya, tuloy-tuloy na. Ngayon, ganito yan. The basic fault there is when you talk about good behavior, lahat na kwentahin mo. Ngayon, kung hindi mo kwentahin, may kasalanan ka rin because they say that it is part of your being in prison. Sa ayat mo sa hindi, nakakulong ka rin. So you are a person deprived of liberty. Ngayon, ang pagkwenta, hindi alam nila kung kasali ba o hindi at may record. Eh, walang record kasi yung lugar, alin doon na nagdetenado si Pemberton, sa Marines, sa garrison. Ang Marisons never kept a record of the, hindi trabaho ng Marines yan, na magbantay kasi hindi yan sila BJMP o taga Muntinlupa. BJMP noong hinihir pa yung kaso. Muntinlupa, yung sa loob na taga Muntinlupa, iba yan. Tandaan ninyo ito ha. Yung detenado ka pa lang, hinihiri yung kaso mo, BJMP ka. Hindi ka makakulong sa Muntinlupa. Ngayon, kung matapos na ang kaso, sentensyado ka, bibitawan ka na ng BJMP, ibigay ka na doon sa mga Muntinlupa personnel. Yung ngayon, yung kaso, pag yung sa pagkapreso niya, wala silang record. So pagka walang record, di mo malaman kung nabilang ba o hindi. Well, pagka ganon, hindi kasalanan ni Pemberton. He is not required to keep his record of his own and characterize his behavior there inside while in prison, detenado for the hearing. Ikakwenta pa ba yung ano? Ang problema nito ganito. Sino magsabi ngayon na noong detenado siya, nagkakalat siya sa loob, sumisigaw siya, o sinisira niya, destroys things? Wala eh. Kasi walang listahan. So it is not the fault of Pemberton na hindi na na-compute because we should allow him the good character presumption. Kasi wala namang nag-report na Marines na nagsabi nagwawala siya. The Marines could have reported, if it were otherwise, to the Secretary of Justice or to the police, to the PNP, na itong tao na ito magulo. Na in fairness, tapos na yung kwintada. He was recommended to be released. I-release mo. It's my decision to pardon. Correct me if I'm wrong. But ito ang tingin ko sa kaso. You have not treated Pemberton fairly. So, i-release ko. Pardon. Pardon, walang mga question yan. It's, wala talaga. It cannot be questioned anywhere. You know, if there is a time where you are called upon to be fair, be fair.
Now, presidential spokesperson Harry Roque, who was the Laude family's legal counsel, said that granting absolute pardon cleared the issue on whether or not Pemberton was entitled to GCTA or good conduct. He, however, said it does not erase the fact that Pemberton is still a murderer. Pemberton was convicted of homicide on December 1, 2015 for killing Laude in 2014. Eagle News will be right back.
The successful development of TPLEX, or Tarlac-Pangasinan-La Union Expressway in 2009, a 4-lane toll road that extends from Tarlac City to Rosario, La Union, with an additional approved extension of 56 kilometers all the way to San Juan, La Union. This is expected to reduce travel time to Baguio and other provinces in northern Luzon. Realizing the vision of creating a better world for Filipinos fueled the team's focus.
The New Era University, in its 45th year of excellence, discipline, and service to humanity, will offer online education at all levels beginning this first semester academic year 2020 to 2021 through the NEU Virtual Learning Environment, or NEU VLE. New Era University offers a complete basic education cycle from kindergarten up to senior high school, offering all strands. NEU has 18 colleges, and 2 graduate schools. It also offers ALS and ETF. Best of all, NEU has the most affordable tuition fees among private universities in the Philippines. NEU is at Quezon City, the city of San Fernando, Pampanga, General Santos City, South Cotabato, Lipa City, Batangas, and Pinugay, Baras, Rizal. New Era University is under the stewardship of Dr. Dilo L. Rosas. What are you waiting for? Be part of the new normal. Enroll now. Classes start on October 5, 2020.
Japan's economy shrank slightly more than initially thought in the April to June quarter, according to official data released on Tuesday, deepening a contraction that was already the worst in the nation's modern history. The world's third largest economy shrank by 7.9% in the second quarter of this year from the previous quarter, more than the initial 7.8% in the preliminary data. The downward revision comes with corporate investment weaker than in the preliminary data released last month, as the coronavirus deepens the country's economic woes. The latest headline figure was modestly better than market consensus of an 8% contraction, but it is the worst figure for Japan since comparable data became available in 1980, beyond the brutal impact of the 2008 global financial crisis. Separate data released by the Internal Affairs Ministry on Tuesday showed Japan's household spending in July dropped 7.6% on year, also underlining the impact of the coronavirus on the economy. The 7.6% drop was the 10th consecutive monthly decline and comes after a 1.2% slide in June and 16.2% dive in May. Now, Bloomberg said the figure came in much worse than economists' expectations of a 3.7% decline. Japan's economy was in recession even before the coronavirus hit due to the damage from a powerful typhoon last year and a sales tax hike in October. And gross domestic product in South Africa shrank by more than half from April to June compared with a year earlier, battered by the impact of the coronavirus pandemic, according to the country's statistics agency. South Korea's economy contracted by 51% in Q2 2020 compared with the second quarter of 2019, according to Statistics South Africa. The unprecedented fall came after a strict lockdown imposed on March 27, caused most economic activity to cease. Italy's competition watchdog said it had opened probes into tech giants Google, Apple, and Dropbox for possible unfair commercial practices in their cloud computing services. 6 investigations in total have been opened against Google's Google Drive, Apple's iCloud, and Dropbox. The Autorità Garante della Concorrenza e del Mercato said proceedings relate to alleged unfair commercial practices and the possible presence of unfair clauses in contractual terms, according to the AGCM in a statement. The authority said the probes against Google and Apple look at a failure or inadequate indication on the collection and commercial use of data provided by the user. Consumers, in order to use cloud storage services, would not be in a position to consent to the companies using their data for commercial purposes. Dropbox faces the same complaint and is also being probed for allegedly failing to provide clear and immediately accessible information on the terms and conditions when wanting to withdraw from the contract or having the right to reconsider, according to the watchdog. The latest probe by the Italian watchdog comes as European countries this year imposed taxes on the so-called GAFA group, or Google, Apple, Amazon, Facebook, and Amazon. Now, the tech giants are accused of unfairly exploiting tax rules that let them declare profits in low-tax havens, depriving other governments of their share. The U.S., however, opposes the tax plans, saying it amounts to discrimination against U.S. firms. TikTok is warning parents and users over a suicide video that has been embedded in a clip. Take a look. The video showing an American man taking his own life came from a Facebook live stream and has been uploaded to various social media platforms, sometimes edited into other unrelated videos. The short-form video platform said its systems were automatically detecting and flagging the clips for violating its community guidelines. Kira Pendergast, CEO of Australian cyber safety provider Safe on Social, advised parents to keep young children off the site for the next couple of days until all the clips had been found and removed. Pendergast also said the clip was being shared on TikTok disguised as a video about kittens. Eagle News will be right back.
Mula noon hanggang ngayon, gabay natin ang MTRCB ratings sa matalino at responsableng panonood. Sa tamang pagsunod sa MTRCB ratings, ginagawa nating ligtas at makabuluhan ang panonood ng bawat miyembro ng pamilyang Pilipino. Lumipas man ang panahon, hanggang may pamilyang Pilipino, andyan ang MTRCB.
Pagkakaalam ko po, kahit kailan, hindi po lumabog ang araw. Ang mundo po ang tumatalikod sa araw, kaya po dumidilim.
Napakaganda ng pelikula, napakagaling ng director.
I highly recommend po yung pelikula, panoorin niyo po.
Panoorin niyo po ito kasi for sure gagaan niyo po.
Opening natin successful siya. Hopefully magtuloy-tuloy itong Make It Real. Taon-taon makapag-produce tayo ng mga bagong filmmakers na makakatulong natin sa mga susunod ng project ng ABC Films.
Let's make it real!
Sa lahat, nagpapasalamat po ako sa ating Panginoong Diyos.
Alam po namin merong uuwing panalo pero wala pong uuwing talo.
Conservationists found a leopardess and her 4 newborn cubs in a farmer's shed and sprung to action, setting up cameras to monitor them and educating scared villagers nearby. The leopards were taking shelter from India's heavy monsoon rains and returned to the forest after 6 days. Take a look.
This is the place
place where the leopard cubs are there. You around. These are the 4 cute little leopard cubs you can see. We will be proceeding
Meanwhile, India on Tuesday sent fresh supplies of firefighting chemicals to help battle a new blaze on a stricken tanker loaded with a massive cargo of crude oil off Sri Lanka's eastern coast. Take a look. The new diamond has been burning since Thursday, and a huge blaze believed to have been extinguished on Sunday reignited because of strong winds on Monday, raising fears of another environmental disaster in the Indian Ocean. Rescuers and salvage experts have said there is no sign of a leak in the Panama-flagged supertanker, which was carrying 270,000 tons of crude and another 1,700 tons of diesel as its fuel. 19 vessels from India and Sri Lanka have been involved in fighting the fire on the new diamond, which reportedly started after a boiler room explosion that killed a Filipino crew member on Thursday. The remaining 22 crew members were rescued. The vessel was on a journey from Kuwait to the Indian port of Paradip. Disney's Mulan remake is facing fresh boycott calls after it emerged some of the blockbuster scenes were filmed in China's Xinjiang, where widespread rights abuses against the region's Muslim population have been widely documented. The lavish $200 million film about a legendary female Chinese warrior was already tangled in political controversy after star Liu Yifei voiced support for Hong Kong's police as they cracked down on democracy protests last year. But the latest furor exploded as soon as the credits stopped rolling after the movie began showing on the Disney Plus channel last week. Now, viewers spotted that Disney included special thanks to 8 government entities in Xinjiang, including the Public Security Bureau in Turpan, a city in eastern Xinjiang where multiple internment camps have been documented. Another entity thanked was the Chinese Communist Party's propaganda department in Xinjiang. The revelation has sparked renewed anger at a time of heightened scrutiny over Hollywood's willingness to bow to China. Rights groups, academics, and journalists have exposed a harsh crackdown against Uyghur and Kazakh Muslims in Xinjiang, including mass internments and forced sterilizations, forced labor, as well as intense religious and movement restrictions. Even before the latest Xinjiang controversy, the hashtag boycott Mulan has been trending in recent weeks. Hong Kong, Thailand, and Taiwan. In the southern Swedish city of Lund, the Anonymous Artist Collective has installed miniature houses and stores all around the center. The public can go on a treasure hunt and find various installations, including a pharmacy, a nod to the pandemic, and a record store. Take a look.
Framförallt är det väl gulligt och mysigt. Men sen får man ju också ett perspektiv på sin vanliga människoverklighet. Ja, men det är lite som att gå in i en sagovärld igen. Man blir barn på nytt, tror jag.
And before we close, we leave you with a word of hope. At the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. See you again tomorrow evening. Good night. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
This program was brought to you by SMC Infrastructure, building a better world.